I feel like a constant failure all the time because you just feel like you can't do it all. And that's actually one of the biggest things I've learned. I think when I grew up, there was this idea of like, you can have it all. I don't believe you can have it all. I think you can have it all at different times, but I don't think you can have it all together. And I think when you try to be perfect at everything, it's just not going to work.
Our guest for today's episode is Anita Anthonj. Anita is the CEO of Talaera, an on-demand platform for professional English and culture training that she co-founded 7 years ago. Under her leadership, the company has grown to reach professionals in over 50 countries, working with some of the world's most well-known and forward-thinking companies. Prior to that, she spent over 10 years working on numerous international TV, film, commercial, and stage projects. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, BBC, Huffington Post, and CBS, amongst others. For more information about Anita, be sure to visit the show notes. Welcome to Paradigm Shifts with your host, Keisha Kruger. As an organization development practitioner and executive coach, I work with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. And here, we're on a mission to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. So, let's unpack light bulb moments for paradigm shifts within your workplace and beyond. Are you ready for a shift? Let's dive in. Hello, Anita. Thank you for joining. I'm so excited to have you today.
So nice to meet you.
You are a CEO and founder of the company named Talaera, and I want you to just share with everyone a little bit about your company.
Yeah, amazing. So my name is Anita. I'm the CEO of Talaera. And what we do here is we help non-native English-speaking professionals like myself communicate more effectively in the workplace. So what this means is primarily language, right? So we help people communicate more effectively in English. But I think where we are a little bit different from other players in the space, we really think about like communication more holistically. So it's language, it's culture, it's soft skills, but business communication skills. So we really want to help people, navigate these things. And we've been around for 7 years. It's been a really exciting ride and work with learners from all over the world. And we are B2B, so we work primarily with corporates, but our learners are everywhere, I think over 50 countries now.
You're global.
Very global. Yeah, it's really fun because like you have some days, you're just like back to back on Zoom with like the whole world. You go, and you feel like you never left your living room. But it's also fun because I have like a certain rhythm now, like a lot of times India is really early and then you have kind of Europe coming and then we're doing the US and then the evening.
To kick us off here, I could share the moment that you decided to start Talaera and talk a little bit about you being a parent and how that's influenced your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So I was an entrepreneur before I was a parent, which I think is the right order to do it in, at least for me. So my husband and I had talked about wanting to start something for a very long time. I've always been like doing my own thing. I was in production before, now I'm in tech, but I always loved building stuff and creating things. So I was in film and I was in the news when we started Talaera. And I remember he was trying to learn German and one day I'm getting off work and he's calling me. He's like, I have this great idea, Anita. We need to start a platform where we like connect learners who want to learn English or German and they can just talk to each other. I'm like, this is an awesome idea. Let's do this. And we go online and there's like a billion companies like this, like a billion literally. And so we're like, okay, that's not going to happen. But we can't believe it. And I was working in an international setting. So I a lot of times heard like, other people like myself coming to the US and their English was fine. It was good, but they had a really hard time navigating in the international workplace. And I think it is because your English can be perfect and you can still have a hard time communicating, right? And I just kept coming back to it. And then I just couldn't let it go. And then I did more research and I found that South Korea is a very interesting case because there's a lot of investment in English training. So I booked a flight and I went to South Korea for 3 weeks to do research. And I came back and I was like, we're going to do this. And so we started building the platform and started building the company. And that's basically how it started. Like any entrepreneur, you don't know what you don't know and you just started. And it's like parenting because you don't know, you think you have no idea and you just let you go on the job. And that's what we did.
I think there's something so valuable in your initiation births of your company story around following that calling, like where you were gravitating towards the idea, you just couldn't let it go. I heard you say that. And I think that's so critical. We get ideas and then sometimes we let them go, and imagine where you would be if you let it go and didn't visit this again, and how many people you wouldn't get to impact.
Absolutely. And there are those weeks when you're like, could I have, but yes, 100%.
And so your company came first and then you were a parent. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I really wanted to have kids with my husband. And I have a company. This is like, we can't have kids in a company. And I had this really wise friend who said, there's never the right time to have kids, which is really true. So I was like, let's do this. And I got pregnant and I was so excited. And I'm like, I think now we're in I think we're going to the third year or something of building the company. And, we're doing this. I'm getting pregnant. I was traveling and we were building the company. Everything was great. My child was supposed to be due when was it? May 29th. And like in March, I was invited to be on this panel. I was already really showing because it's like a couple of months ahead. And it's this panel, like it was like some French organization. It was amazing. I'm standing there. I'm feeling like I'm doing it. I'm like this pregnant woman, like being, running this company. And it was amazing. I still remember it because it was such a great evening. And then a week later, I had like the contractions. I'm like, oh, I'm going to labor. So we, went to the hospital and I had a placental abruption, which I'm not going to go into detail, but I lost my baby at 35 days.
I'm so sorry.
It was tough and it shifted everything, because it was horrendous. I almost lost my life. It was crazy. It was just horrible, but the company needs to keep going. And so I just did it. I mean, it was a strange thing because I felt like a parent. I planned to be a parent and now I'm not. And it was strange. Most clients didn't know. They probably still don't know that happened because I was so like, I wanted to wait until the end. I planned to go right back into work because you do. And so I'm in this weird universe where I'm like continuing as normal and people don't know what's happening. So I'm like crying, getting on a Zoom call, crying again, getting on a Zoom, you just kind of backgrounds. And I wouldn't do it that way again, but at the time that's what I needed. And so, it was really crazy. The weird thing is you go into this like fog. It was like in this fog and it's really crazy because I remember the first time I snapped out of the fog. So this happened in March, was in June, and one of our first time customers renewed with a very big contract. And I still remember it because it was the first time that I was kind of a little bit excited about something again, work related, because I've never told this client this. They don't know, I'm not going to share today, but it was just a really big deal.
And it made a super positive impact in a time where they might have realized it for you.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what it was. And it was this random thing, and, I got pregnant again fairly quickly. And that was really just, it was like trying to keep, doing the company, being pregnant, being super, of course, all the time scared. And then COVID came. So now I'm like 7 months pregnant. There's COVID, there's a company, there's this anxiety all day long. Strangely enough, I think for us, it allowed us to really kind of just focus on our son when he was born. And I think I was able to do that. I think if we hadn't had the loss, I would have never, I think I give a lot of space to my children because of that. I don't know what type of a parent I would have been, but because of it, I'm every day just very grateful that they're here. Like I very rarely complain how hard things are and hard, right? It's hard to parent and to run a company, but it's like I give a lot of space to our children, and I think that is because of that, and I think that would have the difference. I think it's important to give that piece of insight into our parenting journey because it informs everything else that's been happening since and how I think about parenting and running a company. So that was a very long-winded response, but that's basically.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I truly believe there are so many women out there in leadership roles, whether it's in the C-suite or it's a senior level position or an entrepreneur like yourself, who are likely trying to balance personal and professional. Because first of all, I'm so glad for the birth of your son and like that beautiful ending to something that wasn't necessarily a great start. And so I'm curious, when we talked a little bit about the birth of your company and then the stillbirth of your child, and what impact did that have on you running your business? And you gave us a little insight into how it was built to feel excited about things, right? And positive. But how did that impact the way you showed up as a woman in your business and running your company?
It's very interesting because I think the way I showed up, I think looking back, it wasn't the best way and I wouldn't encourage it with my own team. Like, well, it's nobody else's problem. My job is to keep going. I think that's how I felt. This is my personal issue, but that's not my client's issue. It's not my employee's issue. So I just try to keep it together. And it was very clear that I couldn't, I have this wonderful, wonderful colleague / friend, Christina, she just was like, she's amazing. She was just running things when I couldn't. But I think, having gone through it, I think I'm definitely much more mindful when things happen in other people's life. I think it's given me way more empathy. I think in the end, I think it's tough thing to say as a CEO, but I think as a boss or as a human, I think in the end, there's just certain things that are just more important than work. And so, if I have to sense that something goes on with somebody in my team, or I, try to be mindful of that and just always understand, like, even if things are crazy, like sometimes there's just things, and we don't always need to know. And it doesn't always have to be the worst of the worst, but you just have to have a compaction, I think. I think that's really, really important. So I think it's made me much more empathetic, much more aware of other people's struggles. I think that's a huge one, employees and friends and everyone, my own kids, like everyone. So also things around just parenting, struggles in parenting, struggles becoming a parent. Like, I think it's just really opened me up to a whole new world. And I think that is really important because it's what you said earlier, right? There's all these women, we are in leadership positions, are not in leadership positions, we're just working. And most of the time you're just supposed to show up and function. And I'm not sure that's the right way. I think sometimes you have to just show up and function. Like, I do think sometimes there's just a time. There's just not always a time and place. I think it is important to show empathy and compassion as an employer and just as a human.
Yeah, as a human, right? And I think that there are a lot of valuable lessons learned that you just shared that will be really cool to see feedback and hear from others, like what insights they've learned if they've gone through something similar, or perhaps if this could impact and support someone maybe going through a similar situation and they have this initial reaction or want to show up some way similar, how they can maybe help themselves change course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now you have a son. How old is he?
He is almost 4, and I have also a daughter who is almost 2. Yeah.
So 2 success stories, beautiful. I'm curious, balancing parenthood and leadership is not an easy thing to do. And whether you're a woman or you're a man and you're a parent, I know there's plenty of leaders out there who are wondering what strategies or best practices are there effective in maintaining balance while you're building a successful company. Can you share a little bit about that?
I feel like a constant failure all the time because you just feel like you can't do it all. And that's actually one of the biggest things I've learned. I think when I grew up, there was this idea of like, you can have it all. I don't believe you can have it all. I think you can have it all at different times, but I don't think you can have it all together. And I think when you try to be perfect at everything, it's just not going to work. Like with my kids, for example, like I would love to spend all day with them. I love hanging out with them. They're awesome. I just really enjoy hanging out with them, but it doesn't work great. I can't do that all day because I'm building a company. But my dad had his own company when I was little, and so when I became parent, I was like, "How did you do it?" And he was a single dad, so it was like a full another thing. And he was like, he always really time blocked. Like, he made sure when he's with us, he's with us, and when he's at work, he's at work. So that was one of the biggest things I've learned, and I will tell that to everybody. Like, when I'm at work, I'm at work. I do not like having my kids on my lap. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it just happens. But I do, when I'm at work, I work. I time block. I'm very disciplined about my work when I start, when I finish. And the same with my kids. When I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. I do not for example, between 4 and 7 p.m., I want to be with my kids. It will not work every day, but it works most days because that's just my block, unless absolutely. And my team knows it. I can schedule my own calls, so I'm a little bit lucky that way. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but I am very, very militant about my time blocking.
So time blocking allows you to be super focused, disciplined with your time. That's a great strategy. Real quick before we move on to the next one, how was it implementing your boundaries in your role around the time blocking? Did you have an easy time doing that, or was it challenging at first for people around you to kind of adapt?
So I think it's a little unfair because I'm the boss, right? It's like in the end, what's going to happen, right? I think I'm lucky in that because I can't digital in the end. So I think as far as the team goes, that's okay. Now, I don't, I have the same for my team. I always tell them I don't actually care when you work, as long as your work gets done well. I have several moms on my team, and I always tell them, if you want to spend, if you want to do that, it doesn't bother me. It's work. So I think it's a little hard because it's I can kind of do that. I understand not everybody can, but the other thing is the childcare situation, right? I think that's more the thing that I know so many struggle with, and that's so hard. Like, we're far away from family. We're very lucky that we have excellent childcare situation, but that's something, a lot, we spend a lot on. That was really important to make sure that we can get that set up. So I think that's the biggest thing is finding a childcare solution that works, and that's always the hardest, right? For so many parents, it's so hard to find a good childcare situation. But I'm not What's the word? Again, I'm very, very like that needs to work. And then everything else, I feel like it just depends on the team you're in, right? And the organization. I feel like so many organizations have become much more aware and more mindful. And I think, as far as you can, I get that most people can't, but some people can. If you can find an organization that kind of reflects their values, that's great. But I do think as women in leadership, and not just women, men, anybody who's in a leadership position, I think if you want to bring more women into leadership positions or more parents, then you have to build environments where parents can thrive. That is something I'm passionate about and excited about. And I'm hoping that will only kind of, get better and move forward as time goes.
I would love to hear more about the future of the workplace and kind of your ideas for that. And also a little bit about kind of how your experience has helped set up your current environment, your company for those leaders that are parents. But do you have any other strategies that you would share around that? So
The
time blocking is one.
blocking is one. I think, where's your mind, right? You can be at work or with your children, but if your mind is always at the other place, then that's a problem. So I think just not just about time, your physical time where you are, but also, finding ways to really kind of transition, like when you are with kids being versus at work. And again, also all parents are different. I think that's a really important one. Not everybody wants that, or, for me, this is important. But that, I'm very, very, like, I really try to do things like put my phone away, for example, right? Don't have the phone anywhere near me, because even right now it's here. So I'm like, if it pings, I turn it around, because otherwise I want to pay attention. So like make sure it's out of sight. It's like small things, the physical space, like where do I work versus where are my children? It's things like that. And then like as a family, we have a lot of structure as a family. The kids get to do a lot of fun stuff, but we have a lot of structure. And I think because there's so much structure, it works for the kids, it works for us. So that kind of ties back into work. But I think it is that like just kind of a separation when you can is like, because I think one of the things is you're just constantly running, right? If you're constantly worrying about this, that's just really hard. And then the third is like get help whenever you can. If that's your friends, if it's your parents, if it's paid help, I don't know. And again, this is like the ideal world. It's not, possible for everyone, but getting help, I think, is really important. Like I just know I can't. I don't have time to cook. I love cooking. I want to cook, but my husband has to cook. I think that's the other one. Like I feel like if you have two parents working, then I think it's super important that two parents also parent. I'm extremely really, really lucky that I have a husband who parents and doesn't just show up here and there. Like he parents, I parent, and I think that makes it so much easier. It's the same. He has to travel. I have to travel. Who gets to travel? How do we do it? And we're equal. I think that's like something that's so underrated that I think in the public narrative, and also I think how women feel a lot of times, they feel like it's all on us and we have to sort it out. But I think if you have a family unit, it's not just you. I think it's also your partner. And I think that is, again, you can't always, you don't know how it's going to be before you have kids. But that is a really big one, I think.
Yeah, so time blocking, creating a physical environment that aligns you with your goals and your objectives and the intended outcomes. And then, as you said, ask for help when you need it, right? Don't feel like you have to do everything on your own. Those are great best practices and strategies to share around maintaining this balance when you're building a company. It is worth noting, like you had mentioned, that some people, some of those things are possible and really simple to do, and for others it might not be as obtainable, and that's a reality. Like if there is a single parent out there who's also in a leadership role, they might not have that co-parent that they can share those responsibilities with. And so that third strategy you mentioned around asking for help is going to be really critical. Accepting the reality that you can't do it on your own, just making sure that you are effectively using all the resources around you.
Absolutely. And I saw that, like my father was a single dad, and he did it. And that was like, at a time when certainly not single dads and certainly not, set up like that. And that you have one parent, a parent is working. So I think that, I definitely empathize with that, because that is so hard. And I always tell him, like, how did you do that? How did you do it? I don't know.
Wow. I mean, obviously you've learned a lot from watching him, and you got his entrepreneurial sense as well by building a company. I know you're really passionate and excited, as you shared, about building workplaces that really help parents
Yeah.
thrive. And let's talk a little bit about the future of the workplace. What are some key changes or innovations that you envision or maybe even advocate for within your own company to support working parents, particularly mothers, but all parents in the corporate world?
Yeah. So I think number one, and I think the shift towards remote has done a lot of good in terms of that. I think flexible work hours, I think that's super important.
Mm.
I understand it's not possible for every job, it's not possible for every role, but giving people flexibility, to do what they need to do. Because it is, it's small things like you can't, schools are constantly closed, kids get sick, like you have all these things and ask parents, to work hard and to move up if you don't give them the infrastructure. I think reiterating to parents that it's okay, to have a sick child and that sometimes you just can't do it all. I have a couple of wonderful colleagues, who have scenario and then, they do the work at night if they need to, or they take it, I think like doing what you need to do is really, really important. I think companies should encourage that. That's number one. Number two is I think it's really interesting. There's like different cultures, right? And like how working parents are perceived. And I think when you have a culture where it's okay to parent and to work, like I think emotionally just helps, when you just feel like, okay, it's okay when I'm not being judged for it. And then also like just the infrastructure, I mean, we can go into whole healthcare and childcare and all of that. That's a whole nother conversation. But like as
Yeah.
a society, it's not even just on the workplace or the parent, like as a society building much more infrastructure for parents to actually do this because we pay so much for childcare here, and it's just crazy. And then, the hours don't necessarily correspond with working hours and all of that. So to me, it goes even beyond the workplace and just a society becoming much more like supportive of parents, of families, of the because otherwise, like, how are we supposed to do it?
Yeah, because I mean, being a full-time parent, it's not something that you can turn off. Like
And
it's ongoing, it's continuous. Like it's nonstop. So at least within your work environment, if we have companies that can set up those structures, set up that environment, those systems, then parents will have one less thing to really feel burdened about, right? And then that they can give back and be productive and show up in their workplace as the best version of themselves, as the best employee, and feel a sense of fulfillment, hopefully from having a supportive environment around them. And I know that leadership paths, getting to leadership roles for women, particularly our parents, our mothers, can be a little bit complex. It can come up with its own set of unique challenges. We do see already kind of the glass ceiling challenges for women in general, but mothers have their own unique challenges and their own self. So, how do you think companies can better support women in pursuing leadership roles? Particularly, like what does mentorship play in this? Because I think that's going to be really critical.
I mean, I think for you gotta get to a place where you even, I mean, it's gotten much better, right? But when you have a woman in a leadership role, that woman will just understand some of the challenges that the junior employee will feel. And so it's this chicken and egg problem, right? How do you get
Yeah.
people there? And then, but I think that's the first layer, like get more people in, get more women in there, or like, it's because then they can be, more aware of what's actually going on. Like when I've gone through it, like you just connect differently. I think that's the number one. And then mentorship, I think it's so important, right? Like, and that's, I think, going back to what I said earlier, like when I had my journey, I was very much like, I just need to suck it up and just kind of get through it. It's my problem. But I think there has been such a shift around leaders being more vulnerable, being more aware of the challenges that they face. And that's so important. Like if I
Mm.
always come across like I have it all together, how is, more junior employees supposed to, not feel like, oh, this is what I have to do. But I don't think that's real. Like I love Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. And always felt like she was so like real with a lot of this. And that even for me, I'm like, wow, like, it just makes me
Yes.
feel like, okay, I'm not a loser. I'm not doing something wrong. It's just really hard. And so I think that's it for me, like more vulnerability, more conversations around it. And I also don't think you have to have a conversation about everything all the time, but just asking, checking in, if you are aware of something going on in somebody's life, like giving them the space and also opening a door to have them talk to you. I think it's just so important. I think so much more is like just signaling and being a good example. It's like children, right? If I do one thing one way and I tell my child you have to do it this way, like if I always tell them say thank you, but I never do it, how are they supposed to learn it, right? And that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
I've made mistakes myself that I'm, now becoming a little more mindful of.
Right.
You know,
There's so much to unpack there. I think the first thing that you say about having more representation for women in the leadership or the C-suite is a really natural and critical first step. It's essential because, as you said, they will understand 50% of the employee population, right? Or whatever makes, the women make up of an employee population. And that's a good portion of an organization. And those needs might not be represented in the leadership team. And the leadership team is what informs a lot and influences a lot of the direction of the company. So I love to hear that. And I think that's common sense in that as a great objective for all leaders and for all organizations. And then the second thing you said around kind of being a good role model. I think there's so many parallels between effective leadership and like really good parenting. And I think you're hitting up on a lot of these that I'm seeing how well they connect and correlate. One of the most important things of an effective leader is just being a good positive role model, whether it's championing change or helping people through adapting different things that are happening within the organization, coaching. But you have to be that positive role model for someone else to kind of pave that way and show them, hey, this is okay. The vulnerability, as you say, thank you, Brene Brown, for it's like, it's about time. Like we are not robots. Let's be humans. Let's be women. If we're women in leadership roles, yes, we can do it all. Let's do it. And let's also show, hey, we can have imposter syndrome. We can struggle with this feeling of like, I'm not good enough, while also like kicking butt and like doing really good in the workplace. So
I love that what you just said. I think that's so it. And I think so many women feel like that. And I think the most accomplished women feel like that. And it's like, it would be for me the goal to how can we actually move through that we can just be as confident as our, you know.
yeah, like our employees, they're looking up to us, especially, women employees looking up to women leaders. And like, how did you do it? How did you get there? What are the answers? And it's like, it's okay to say, I don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring it out. I am right now, just trying to stay afloat, and that's okay. Right.
100%, 100%. But the thing is, we were never taught to do that, right? Because it was like, well, you have to do things
Right.
to even get here. And it's like, and I feel like we're just like this first generation where, or like generation and a half, we're like, we're like, okay, we deserve this place, and now we can worry about other things like, hey, how do I actually feel about this, and how to make sure that the next generation gets it. It's really a weird place in time right now, moment in time.
Yeah, it is. And I feel so fortunate to be in this era and to be in this moment of time, because there's so many there are a lot of paradigm shifts related to women in leadership and in the workplace in general. And I want to go back to mentorship and the role that it plays in helping women kind of pave their way through leadership roles. And I'm curious if you've had like a female mentor, woman mentor that's kind of helped you, being that you were raised by a single father. I'm curious how, you were able to kind of fill that other side of mentorship in a way.
This is such a great question. So I was like, I immediately had like kind of three people, and I don't know that it would be mentors, but like I had a wonderful English teacher in high school. She was just amazing. She wasn't a mentor in any way, but I just felt like she very much encouraged what I was interested in, which was English. I loved English in the US and UK and traveling and all that. We had a vice principal that she was amazing. She was just so wonderful. I was an exchange student when I was 16, and I came in the US, and I came back to Germany, and I didn't not want to finish high school. I want to get back to New York and do my thing. And what do we have to do to keep you here? And I was in the theater at the time. I loved theater. So she really she created this like space where I was teaching the fifth graders. I had this theater club, so these were kind of like, even in high school, they weren't necessarily mentors, but they just saw that I needed it, like that I was very proactive, that I liked to build things, and that I wasn't going to just be okay just taking stuff in. Like I need to also create. And so I'm very very fortunate. I don't think I've ever told either of them that, but that I had that. And then later when I was in New York, so I came here, and I worked in performing arts for the first few years, and I had this, she was amazing, this manager, Davy, and she's just unbelievably wonderful. I met her and she really became like really like a mentor, not in this space, in a different space, but it was like the first time that I felt like I actually have a mentor. Fortunate. She was incredible. She was like, she was just what I needed at that time. And I think because she took I really felt like she took care of me, and she was very much always thinking about like, how she can support me. It made me very aware, like that you are very fortunate when you have a mentor. And so I think it's really, really important. I think a lot of people don't get the opportunity to have a mentor. And I think it's not even that you necessarily need a mentor in the workplace, but I think having a mentor in life is like a really good thing to have.
A mentor in life. Yeah, because work is not separate from our personal lives. It's just one big thing, right? I think it's so cool to hear how you went back to someone who had an earlier influence and impact on your journey today, and like in the last, you said 7 years the company
Yes,
has?
yeah.
7 years. So I'm a big fan of practicing gratitude. Have you said thank you or like reached back out to her and say like, this is the impact you've had? Did you ever do that?
So it's interesting. I did it with her when I was still in performing arts. Absolutely
Yeah.
not in the last 7 years, but I actually did that with somebody else. So when I was in high school, I was like 15, 16. I was like working on the weekends in a drugstore because I wanted to go to the US, and I was like, I'm going to save money and I'm going to work. So I did that on the weekends. And at the time, it was like a local store. It was a drug chain like CVS here. It was called the wonderful store if you're ever in Germany. And I had this manager who was probably in his late 20s at the time, and he was just great. And years later, like I think 5, 6 years later, I was like, I wonder what he's up to. And I went on LinkedIn and I saw that he's still at the same company. And I was like, oh my God, if he's still there, he's probably like gone. And I emailed him, and we ended up having dinner in
Oh
my
my
town. And he couldn't fully remember me because I was like I was like a student. And I was like, you don't, and it was so amazing for him, I think, to hear that like he was, I was like the student worker, and it had such an impact on like, I was able to save money and to come here and do all these things. So I very much believe in gratitude. Like I'm actually every day I feel like I'm so lucky, even in the toughest of times. I'm always like, I'm so lucky to get to do what I do, have a lovely family and friends. And so I very much believe in that. I have reached out to almost everybody at different times, even specifically in the last 7 years, because it's been a different, like, I think it's been a different place, but I have in the past. So yeah. And I think it's important to sometimes reach out to people and just go like, I was thinking of you. Like, it's just nice,
100%, 100%. And now I want you to flip it. So those individuals were impactful in your world to who you are today. Now imagine all of the individuals, all the women, all of the people that you are showing up as that person for others. So how cool is that? Like with what you're doing today, you're influencing and having a positive impact on so many that maybe haven't had the opportunity to reach out and thank you yet. And it's coming. I know it's coming your way because I can only imagine how much influence and support you've been, especially on the topic of like supporting women and leadership. So I also want to just chat with you a little bit as you reflect on your journey. What has been one of the most surprising lessons about entrepreneurship and parenthood?
Oh, this is such a good question. I think the biggest lesson with entrepreneurship is it's always harder than you think it is. And I think that it's like just keeping a long breath is really important, and to know when it's really bad, it's also going to be really good again. Like I feel like, and that's actually also in life. I think life is like this strange roller coaster, right? Like I feel like sometimes when you're just at the bottom of things, I always feel like it can't get much worse. So now we have to go up again. I feel like that's something I've really learned. And then in terms of parenting, I think to me, parenting, it's easier than I thought it would be. Again, I think it's because of my past, but it's like, I feel like this one lesson I have with parenting is like they just grow up so fast, and everybody tells you this. And so I know I've talked to many parents, who have older kids that like enjoy the time now because they're literally like it goes so fast. And I'm aware of it every single day. And it's like a strange thing where I feel like just kind of clinging on to that and like remembering the things and like, being present with them. I think that's such a big deal. And I learned that from my dad, which is like, even if you don't have as much time, just be present, because that's what they remember. And with me, I thought my dad was around all the time. That's how I remembered. He wasn't, but because I think he always showed up. He was at every theater performance I had. He drove us to hobbies. He was like, knew my friends, like all these things, even though he was working full time. And I think that's a really big one that I've learned from him, but that I'm also now seeing with my own kids, that it is important to show up. And I can't do a lot of the school drop-offs, which sucks. But that's something I'm like, I want that for next year. Like that's like the thing now that I want to do next year, for example, just not beating down on yourself so much. That's another lesson. Like it is, and I can't change it right now. And like, then make the change when you can. That's a second lesson.
And I love how your strategies and best practices for supporting you in making like balancing parenthood and leadership are essentially what are going to make the biggest difference for that next generation, and how they show up in the world. And they're gonna, as you say, like they're gonna remember the moments that you were so present and focused on your time with them, and just really showing up, right? Like separating it and saying like, this is the time I spend with my kids. This is just my children and I's time, and that quality time is going to be what I focus on for this amount of time, and then work can happen when I've got it slotted out to happen, right? And I think that's really important. All right, Anita. So through Paradigm Shifts podcast form, I'm going to close out with one final question, and that is, what's the most recent paradigm shift that you've experienced?
So I'm sure that like a lot of people say this here, but I've just been really blown away by what's happening in the AI space. Like, I don't know if you saw it the other day, but I saw this, I forgot what it's called, Sora or something, from OpenAI. Like, they can now like speech to video. And it's just like, I keep thinking about like how that's going to affect our lives and my children. I'm not actually weirdly, I'm not scared of it, strangely enough. It's more like, it feels like, when you said earlier that we live in this weird time and space right now, that's like really exciting to live in. That's how I feel. I feel like I just live in this this shift in time. And like when people look back on the history books, they'll look at this moment, and that's like been really exciting to me. Like, I think there's so much going on the planet right now that's just kind of shifting. That's like something that has just, and I really had to think about the videos, this.
Yeah, I'm also like have so many questions about like how this is going to impact everything else.
It's a small thing. Like my husband, like, so you can talk now to ChatGPT, and I make fun of him because he'll literally all day I call her Sam. I just hear her in the other room, and it's like when you listen to like, I can't say that, Alexa, because she'll laugh. And it's like it sounds like a robot, but this is just like it sounds like a human, and it's like it has a personality. It's like this is like that's something I've just been like. It's like,
what a world we're living in. Well, this has been such a pleasure. I love talking with you, Anita. I cannot wait for others to hear about your story, your entrepreneurial journey, and also how parenthood has impacted your journey and your company overall, and the success that it's had for others. So thank you so much for sharing all your insights, your best practice, and I can't wait to follow along and see what all the good things that you do for the.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely chatting with you.